Hey, what's up? Thanks for stopping in here today. I'm out in the garage, which as you can see is a beautiful... Oh, Piper's out here. I didn't even know. Piper, say hello. She is really excited to have me home all the time, and that is all I can say about that. So, yeah, I'm out here in the garage, and we are starting Unit 5, Economic Development and Industry. So I think what's going to happen for as long as we're out is I'll probably give you a day with either clarifying the activity that you're doing or going through some notes with you. But remember, Andrew Patterson podcast is where the majority of the content will be. I'll probably go through the stuff that we would go through as notes in class, but go through it really quickly because the video thing I'm using right now is there's a 15-minute limit on the video, so I don't want to pay to get the pro version, but we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. So it might happen. So again, what we're going to go through here is just kind of the basics of economic development. And that's really the focus of this week. And then next week, we will look at industry. And then if we're at another week, which we probably will, we're going to shift into agriculture in Unit 6. So if you have questions about testing and how that's going to work, I don't really know right now how that's going to work. But that's something that we're talking about and trying to figure out. So we will get to a solution. We'll let you know when that time comes. Okay. All right, so we have used the term development some when it relates to some of our other units of study, but we really haven't talked a lot about specifically what does it mean to be a developed country. So that is something that it's kind of inherent, like you probably have an idea of what it is without having to go through it. But when we look at this picture here, this kind of gives you an idea that even if we consider what development is, that sometimes even inside of a country, it's not universal. You'll have places that have pockets of economic development with high rises and economic activity and white collar jobs and even blue collar jobs and factories, and it looks good. People are making money, disposable income, healthcare, education. You got all these good things, but even maybe across the river or in a different part of a city or a different part of the country itself, you're not going to see those things. So it's hard for us sometimes to universally say that this is a developed country and this is a developing country when at the same time you've got pockets of both in the same country. But we look at the average, right? We look at the mean. We look at what the median setting is in that country, and then we can make a good justification of whether or not it's developed and developing. So what is it? If we have to give a definition, and I'm going to give you one because that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I've chosen. Piper is now sniffing my foot. I'm not sure why. But development is the process of improving material conditions of people through the diffusion of knowledge and technology. So development is always things that you see. And I think one thing that you can look at, I've mentioned this once or twice to one of you all, the classes at least, is that you can sometimes see how developed the country is by looking at the average toilet and the average bathroom that country has. We're not talking about things that are abstract here. We're looking at the material possessions and conditions that people have. And how do you get it? You get the diffusion of knowledge and technology, the spread of those things to change what the conditions are. And we are using the acronyms MDC and LDC a lot for the rest of the semester because we're looking specifically at what is development, and then we're looking at industry, agriculture, and urban geography/services, and we're going to see stark differences between MDCs and LDCs. And when we look at this world map here, you can see that like there's a major difference in between the hemispheric conditions. Like you have developed countries, which are in the blue in the northern hemisphere, and the southern hemisphere, which is mostly developing. And I have a special guest here. Maisie, can you say hi to everybody?
Hey.
Hey, so Maisie, what have we been doing at home?
I don't know.
You don't know? We were just singing some songs from what movie?
I don't know.
Oh, you do know. What songs have we been singing?
Frozen 2.
Frozen 2. Help me, please. Frozen 2. It's been a lot of fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't pick your nose, okay? So I'm doing a video, so can you say hi to all my students?
Hi.
Hi, tell them to be safe, okay? Have fun.
Have fun.
All right. You want to go back inside?
No.
You want to sit here and just listen?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I've got to talk, okay?
Okay.
So I got to talk to them about development.
Okay.
Is that exciting?
Okay.
You think that's exciting?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't think she's into it. But anyway, you can see the difference between the northern and southern hemisphere. So when we're talking about the differences between MDCs and LDCs, we can look at several factors: population pyramids, job sectors, population distribution, healthcare levels of education, and then we generally can draw a line, mostly northern to southern. Are you leaving, Maisie?
No, I was saying what?
You're going to play in the garage? Okay. So we're looking at the differences, and we can kind of delineate them by these five figures. Okay. And when we look at this thing called the Brandt line, which let me move me over here out of the way. When we look at what's called the Brandt line, this is a way that we, again, can classify differences between MDCs and LDCs. And it may be good for you maybe to stop right now and pause my voice and kind of take some notes here, because you see in the MDCs where you have all of these different factors, and LDCs. Okay, shut the door. Yeah, shut the door. Bye. Okay, leave it cracked. So, and you can see, for example, like when, and you might want to refer back to this, but when we talk about like an MDC, the majority of the population in an urban atmosphere, and that's also suburban. When we go to an LDC, and it's mostly rural. So again, you're kind of going back and forth here. MDCs, this denotes an aging population, whereas in LDC, you're going to have a younger population. So again, might be a good idea for you to get kind of the differences here between the two, so that when we build on this, you know generally what we're talking about. So how do we measure development? Because, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, that's an MDC or that's an LDC, but how do we like say one is more developed than the other? Well, there's a lot of things we can do. We can look at the economics of a country. We can look at what's called the gross domestic product, which is adding up basically the total amount of wealth generated from the goods that the country makes and the services that it produces. But the better measure, and the one that's used in the 21st century, is called the gross national product, which takes your GDP but then adds in the trade balance that your country has. So are you exporting more than you're importing? Are you sending out more than you're bringing in? Or is it opposite? So a kind of a healthier economy would likely have more that is sending out than bringing in, but there are also other factors that can then change that. So in such a globalized economy that we have, we are more likely to use a GNP to denote development than the GDP. We also look at a country's productivity in their industrial sector, in their factories. How hard do workers have to work to get the job done? Next week, when we look at industry, we're going to talk about American manufacturing today and how productive it is. That a factory worker doesn't necessarily have to work as hard today to produce more than they did, say, 100 years ago when technology was limited in the industrial scene. Certainly combined with this. Itchy nose. So we also look at the types of jobs that a country has, and this is important vocab for you. We look at the primary sector, which is basically agriculture, any job involving an agricultural position, and also resource extraction. So if we're getting something out of the ground, we call that a primary sector job. So fishing, or pulling the fish out, right? Mining, taking anything out of the ground, those would classify as primary sector jobs. And a developed country is going to have less of those than these other two sectors. Secondary sector is just manufacturing, so anything having to do with a factory or industrial setting is going to be secondary. I'm not done yet. Give me 5 minutes, okay? Okay, you need to be quiet out here, okay? So again, secondary is a manufacturing position, and tertiary is service-based. So and we'll talk all about that in our last unit, but a job like you would think secretary, hospital, food service, anything like that, that isn't factories and resource extraction / agriculture is going to fit in as a tertiary position. We also have two other terms we can use. A quaternary position is a knowledge-based field, which is focused on research and development. And a quinary position is what we call gold-collar workers. And those are people who make leadership decisions, your CEOs, your political officials, things like that. So all of those are in the tertiary field. So quaternary and quinary are not too different positions or sectors, they are with tertiary. But again, this is a way that we can classify a country's economy. Oh, look at that pretty baby. That is not baby Kit. That's another baby. Baby Kit's around here somewhere. I should check on her. What are you doing?
I'm playing with that.
You're playing with that? Okay, be careful, okay? She'll be fine. All right, so also to measure development, we can look at a couple other factors like education and literacy rate. So obviously the more people that can read in your country, the more developed it'll be. How good and how affordable and how accessible is your health care? More developed countries have health care that is, and maybe not necessarily free, but at least it's available to all, it's accessible to all, and it is quality health care as well. If your life expectancy in your country is higher, that's good for you, obviously. If your infant mortality rate is lower, we've seen these figures before, right? Unit 2, you want that low. Shh, be quiet, okay? Natural increase rate, we want that to be low, right? More developed countries have a lower natural increase rate. Crude birth rate is something we also look at. And obviously, developing countries have a higher CBR. So all of those are other factors that we use to measure development. So how do we put it all together? Well, there's 2 development indexes that are used by demographers and economic, how about economists? We can use that as well. But the folks who care about these things, like there's 2 measures that we use. One is called the HDI, which is called the Human Development Index. And you're going to probably, I think, be using this with this activity you're going to be doing. But the HDI is combining life expectancy with expected years of schooling and GNI per capita. It's taking those figures and creating an index of how developed countries are. And if we look up here, let me see if this website is easily accessible, and it is. We look at the countries that are top, and we'll scroll down the list here. Norway currently ranking number 1, at least in 2017 rankings. Bless you. Switzerland, Australia, and we're going to keep scrolling. Where's the USA? There we are, 13th in the HDI. So again, that's measuring Human Development Index. And again, you can kind of look, like life expectancy is the thing that we are a little bit lower than some of these other countries. And you will be able to look at those statistics a little bit more here soon. So let me move me over here. I've got like 2.5 minutes left. That's good. So that's the HDI. Again, a means in order to measure these countries' development. The last thing here is another measure of development. It's called the Gender Inequality Index, the GII, which is measured from 0 to 1. And this is basically measuring the levels of gender inequality in your country. And of course, the lower amounts of inequality there is, the higher developed you are. And the map can kind of show you that as where are the most advanced countries in terms of offering gender equality. The higher the number in the index, the more inequality is present. And it's influenced by several factors. How much are women participating in the workforce? How empowered they are. Quiet. Shh. I'm almost done, okay? How empowered they are politically, socially, and then also reproductive health. So Andrew Patterson's going to have a lot more on that, as he will all of these things. I just wanted to offer you an introduction here to development because, again, I believe it's good for you to hear the content in multiple different explanations, and I think as long as you have me and Andrew Patterson and maybe Mr. Lynch for the review sessions and a crash course book, you're going to be okay because now you're starting to put these explanations together. So again, this is our first video. Again, this is basically serving as notes that we would take in class. The next thing that we're going to do in the next video you're going to check out today is going to be an explainer on the Dollar Street activity, which is your first thing that you'll look at. We'll go to the website that you'll use, and you'll also get to see what the paper is and be able to download that from Google Classroom. So again, that's our first look. Maisie, what are you doing? Come up here for a second.
No.
Oh, you don't want to say bye?
No.
She doesn't want to say bye, so I'm sorry. You know, that's the way it is. So again, I'll get with you in the Dollar Street video, and we'll go from there. Peace.